Welcome to this edition of the Contractor Commute. My name is Drew. I'm here with Ben Walsh, and we are going to talk today about leading in construction. So what does it mean to be a leader? How do you lead? If you're leading a team, that's one thing. Also, I think we would both say that everyone's a leader because ultimately you are leading yourself. You got to kind of captain your own ship, especially if you got your own business or you're able to kind of manage and run your own days, as most guys in this space do. Setting leadership priorities for yourself and potentially other people is going to really make or break you. So we're going to talk about leading in construction. So any initial thoughts on that, Ben?
Well, the first thing that came to mind when you were saying that is how many of us have got into construction because we wanted the flexibility of being able to do what we wanted to do when we wanted to do it. Mm-hmm. And suddenly it opened up this whole Pandora's box of now we have this flexibility that we've never managed before. We've always been told, or a lot of times we've been just told what to do before that. You know, you got to be at work at 7, you quit at 3. You're just sort of that, whatever the person on the treadmill, just doing what the boss tells you to do. And suddenly it was like, heck with that. We'll do whatever we want to do now. And we have the opportunity. And suddenly that flexibility has some problems, doesn't it? I mean,
yeah. I think, there are benefits to being managed.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things you don't have to think about because someone else did.
Right.
And they do give you your work. And while those can feel like prison bars sometimes, I got to stay within the lane of what I'm being told to do. There's also this level of security there that's like, hey, if I stay in this lane, we're going to be successful. And I think when you have no one managing you and no one's motivating you, no one's inspiring you, no one's, holding you accountable to anything, that freedom can kill you if you don't manage it well and don't lead yourself well.
Yeah. And I think we can see this in any industry. I mean, anybody can take that. I'm the boss. I can decide what I want to do, when I want to do it, and essentially take that freedom and do the wrong things with it.
Yeah.
And really hurt themselves. And I think that's a lot about mindset too, right? I mean, how do we approach what we are as a leader? How do we approach what we should be? What should we be doing? And what really our objectives as leaders need to be defined, what our expectations are. It's so easy to define expectations of what we want other people to do. Like if we only had better employees, we would be so good.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this. We kind of jotted down some just principles to live by and just leadership mentalities are going to help people be successful. The first one we talked about was just focusing on success instead of focusing on failure. And at a high level, it's, what are you thinking about? What's going on in your thought life? What are some areas, and so one of the things we talked about is really this concept of, you have a thought life, you have things going on in your head, and you've got a focal point. And they say when you're driving a car, they always, as a driver said, they're like, don't look at the road right in front of you. You're always going to be swerving in the lane. You're always supposed to be looking down the road. It's like, okay, well, what do you see in the future? Where are you pointed at? Where's your target? And where's your focus at? And you can write focus statements and vision statements, but I think most of the time you're going to find your actual focus when you're sitting in your truck at the red light and there's nothing to think about except for what you're thinking about, or you can't sleep at night. What thoughts are going through your mind as you're losing sleep? That is where your mental energy is actually going, and just the power of focusing and being aware of what that thought life is. And are you focused on failure or success?
Yeah. And a lot of times that translates into, are we focused on the pressures of the moment? And do we have enough space to be able to deal with them instead of just a reactive way? How many times have we seen other people as leaders just focusing on reacting to problems? And it's a difficult spot to be. And I found myself in that spot as well, of just going from one fire to another, never really thinking about where am I going. It's just, this is an immediate problem. We solve it. We don't think about what happens next.
Right.
And that's a dangerous spot to be as a business owner.
And you'll be busy.
Yes.
Because there's no shortage of like those problems, right? So, you can be in fire extinguishing mode all day.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, you'll be tired. You'll feel like you've worked hard. But you're not quite sure what you did.
Yeah.
Other than react and then you're kind of a sailboat in the wind without a rudder.
Yeah.
And whichever way the wind blew that day is the day that you went. And that may be the complete wrong direction, but that's where your energies went.
Yeah.
There's this analogy, right, where like your brain is, and your mind is like kind of Grand Central Station or like an airport, right? And there's, flights coming in, flights going out. You walk through an airport, like that gate's got a plane going to Nashville. This plane's got a flight going to LA, and it's like, well, where do you want to go? There's all this traffic coming in and out, right? And you kind of this air traffic control of what's coming in and out of your mind, and which flights do you want to board? A lot of times as a leader, because it's all on you, whether you own your own business or you just own your own day, or shoot, you're just leading your own family. A lot of times it's on you to make the decisions. And so things creep in your head, and flights come in all the time that have a destination on them for discouragement, or we're going to fail, or this isn't going to work. As a leader, those thoughts come in your mind every day. At some point, you're going to have a thought that comes in and says, hey, you're crazy. You shouldn't have done this.
Yeah.
You're in over your head. You're not going to make it, and that thought will come in, and you got to make a decision of which plane you're going to get on. You're going to board that flight to discouragement, or be aware that plane is landing and say, wait a minute, I'm not going to get on that, right? And I think as a leader, because there's pressure on you, because you are charting your own course, because no one's inspiring you or motivating you or telling you what to do, it's often you've got to lead yourself well. And I think a lot of that starts with which planes are you getting on in your own head.
So such a great point. And really, so many times we engage thoughts without really stepping back from the thought and analyzing, is this a thought we should, taking the thought captive. You're a person of faith, you've heard that before.
Yeah.
It's, taking the thought and saying, do I want to engage with this thought? Do I want to get into that thought? Or just say, there's this thought, and this is a thought of just, you're not going to make it. It's all going to pot. Just, throw in the towel, quit early, go have some fun, even when you got something you need to get done, or just work till work till midnight, ignore your family. All these things are potential solutions to pressure points.
Yeah.
And you can engage a thought you shouldn't, instead of just taking that thought captive and saying, okay, no, that's not one I want to, it's mindfulness, being able to take the thought and just be able to look at it and say, all right, thoughts are fleeting.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they come and go all day long.
Yep.
Which ones are we going to engage with?
Yeah.
Which one are we going to give into?
Which train are you going to board?
Yes.
And then the other thing too is once you've boarded the wrong train, how quickly do you realize you've gotten on the wrong train? And you get off. Because some of those are discouragement, those things, but some of like a train that a lot of people fight is procrastination. I'll get to it later. Will you? Right? Where it is, and that's where even you can get behind on projects, get behind on your work. Especially if you own your own deal, no one knows where you are. You can just say, well, I'm working with another client, I'm on another job, but maybe you're not. And no one really knows where you're at. And so you can procrastinate and be inefficient. And mentality wise, you start to think it's not a big deal. And those are the things that can go downhill pretty quick in your mind. But it starts with the trains that you got on. And then how quickly can you get off of that train? When you start, whether you're thinking about discouragement, failure focused instead of success focused, I don't know what you're thinking about right now. Like, no one knows what you're thinking about except for you. So who do you want to get you off of that train?
Yeah, let's talk about some strategies for dealing with this. I think one of the things that's been really helpful in my life is actually building some routine, building some rails for those trains. To be able to say, these are the things that are important to me in life. Because there was a time I just get up, do whatever the heck I wanted to do, jump out. If I wanted to leave for work first thing in the morning, beat everybody to work, get stuff done, that's what I do. If I wanted to stay back, there wasn't these boundaries. And I grew up with a very sort of very fun type of ad hoc, we do what we want to do kind of approach to things without those kind of boundaries. And I kind of got used to that. And there's some benefit to that too. But started realizing that even in all of that, there was routine, but there's discipline. I mean, it's being able to say, no, I'm not going to do that. And that was hard for me. I mean, to be able to say, okay, I'm going to get up at 5. I'm going to take the time to, have my morning routine, spend time doing the things that matter, spending time with my family first, and then leave for work. Maybe that's morning, maybe that's evening, but be able to set the parameters for it. Yeah. I mean, what does that look like for you? I mean,
well, you got to make some pre-choice choices. You know what I mean? Like don't wait for the decision to come to think about it. Like, I think those disciplines and those routines are like, no, I've already made a decision on what I'm going to do, whether it's the alarm clock, whether it's moving the alarm clock across the room. So it's like, no, I don't hit snooze, because I know morning me really good. Morning me hits the snooze button because he's not thinking about, productivity and getting stuff done. He's thinking about more sleep, And so some of those pre-choice choices are things like, hey, my alarm clock's on the other side of the room, or I set morning appointments where I know I've got to be somewhere by 7 a.m. So that gets me up and out of bed and out of the house by a certain time, or, just whatever those things are, to put schedules around yourself where it's like, I know myself well enough to know what I need to be able to be productive. And in the moments when you're thinking right and you're on the right mental trains, make some decisions and set some structure in place, knowing that you're going to have moments where you're struggling, where you're discouraged, or whatever. But it's like my commitments and my disciplines keep me on the rails.
So let's talk about a scenario where you have all those routines set up. You have the life you want as far as your morning routine, your evening routine. You have these rituals established. You're happy with that, and then you realize, oh, there's only 8 hours in a day.
Yeah,
and you can't get done what you need to get done.
Yeah,
So now it comes down to growing a team, leading other people, and
Yep.
and they're not just going to do that out of the box.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you have to replicate.
totally. Yeah, they need to be led.
Yes.
I've been there's all these manager roles and, in corporations and companies. And it's like, the truth is most people actually do need to be managed. This is reality. Like, if they didn't, you wouldn't need some of those roles. But I think when you start setting the tone and setting the pace for your team, you got to think about certain things, and you also have to set the tone mentally and emotionally. One thing that I've heard you talk about in the past is being able to absorb emotional pressure, or being able to absorb pressure for your team. And I think as a leader, you're always going to have the most pressure. The heaviest weight is always carried by the senior leader, right? And how do you absorb and carry that weight well, and not just pass it off to everybody else? So talking about how do you absorb pressure for your team?
One of the things that has really helped me absorb pressure is being able to realize at the end of the day, my life and my world is very insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Today will be long forgotten, and a year from now, yes, choices have consequences. But at the same time, what I see as pressure is, do we have enough money for the payroll? Do we have, we're short materials, we're short manpower, we don't have, whatever the pressures are at the moment, there can be this overwhelming sensation of what matters today is all the world's about. It's like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
The life moves on without me.
Yeah.
And if I died today, would that even matter?
Yeah.
Probably not.
No.
And so to really focus on the things that are of utmost importance, and not just get distracted by what seems important.
Yeah.
People's expectations of me are not even all that important. People say, when will you be done with this job? Well, we'll try to get done by tomorrow. Is that an expectation we should have there?
Right.
Are we creating scenarios where we feel pressure we shouldn't even feel?
Yeah.
I've had moments like that, trying to please people.
Mm-hmm.
And you suddenly fall off this, what is healthy for me and healthy for my team. We're focusing on things that are really not important.
Yeah.
So that's been the number one thing for me.
Yeah.
It's just being able to focus on making sure that I keep that properly weighted. The pressures of the moment aren't what life's all about.
Yeah. We have a way of turning, when you're in any kind of leadership role, or, on your own business, it's easy to make mountains out of molehills in your mind. Mm-hmm. And we create these mental monsters that are sitting there in your mind. And I've gotten to a practice where when I'm stressed out, or I'm feeling anxiety or pressure over something, and it's keeping me up at night, or it's starting to consume my thoughts, the problem, I've got a discipline where I have a journal where I'll sit on the left column and I'll just put words to everything I'm feeling, right? Mm-hmm. Like this, I'm worried about this. I'm not sure I'm going to solve this problem. This customer's upset, or I've got this, tension or unresolved conflict within the team, or whatever thing is on the left side. And a lot of times what helps me is actually putting it on paper, because almost every time when I write it down, it's nowhere near as big as it felt. And then on the right column, on the top, say, what can I do about it?
Yeah.
Right. And then you actually write out the things that you can do about those problem statements. And the truth is, some of those problems you can't solve. But what it does is gives you a course of action to put your effort, your mental and your mental energy and your time into ways to solve problems, instead of spending your energy worrying, spending your energy on fear, spending your energy on avoidance, or some of those things, to where you're exhausted at the end of the day, but you didn't really do anything about the problem. And tomorrow morning, that problem's going to wake you up before your alarm clock. And it's going to be like, good morning. And it's going to be ready to, kick your tail all day long, because you didn't do anything but worry about it yesterday.
You bring up a couple great points, because so many times the pressures of the moment, the things we have to deal with, the stuff that's, oh man, that's keeping you up at night, are the result of decisions we've made prior to that.
100%.
And suddenly we have the consequences. And sometimes we didn't know that, it's inexperience. Sometimes we just knew it coming, but we just procrastinated, whatever it was. Now we're here, we have pressure, something has to be solved today. And we have to recognize that it was the culmination of decisions over time.
Right.
And sometimes the solution is a culmination of right decisions over time.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it means, having conversations with people and saying, you know what, I let you down. This is the expectation. This is what I have expected myself.
Yeah.
And that's not what I delivered. And here's what I can propose as a solution. It's not ideal, but that's what I can do.
Yeah.
And then you also bring up a great point, which is about the emotional, not letting the emotions rule the day. Because how we feel about what's going on in life is not necessarily reality.
Yeah, that is.
Nor should it be.
It should not be. Feelings they're great. They add a lot of flavor to life.
Yes.
Right. They're the ups and downs. Without emotions and without feelings, like our life would be very stale and boring. But understanding like feelings are also horrible filters for decision making.
Yeah.
Like if you make decisions based on the feeling, based on the fear of certain situations, you'll make poor decisions. You'll be fickle. Yeah. Instead of your feelings coming and going, you'll be fickle. You'll be a person of no roots, of no discipline. You'll be unreliable because everything depends on how you felt that day, and then circumstances begin to rule your decision making because they're blowing on the sails of your feelings, and you're making, feeling based decisions instead of fact, strategic, thoughtful decisions about what you're doing with your time, what you're doing with your effort, how you're communicating. But yeah, the feeling will come and it will go. I am glad that I did not get some of the tattoos that I felt like getting when I was 18 years old,
so many times.
It felt so cool.
The emotion, when we make fun of other people, that we can see it so clearly in another person making a decision based on emotion. Mm-hmm. You can see somebody reacting to things going on in life, and you're saying, it's not that bad. Like,
right.
Don't jump off the bridge. It's really,
yep.
Today might suck, but tomorrow might be the best day of your life. Don't throw in the towel.
Yeah.
Like, stay the course. It's just not that bad.
Yeah.
But the emotions tell you, no, it's horrible. Yep. Everything's coming to an end.
Yeah.
All these problems because there's 2 problems.
Right.
There's 50 other things that are amazing. You're alive, you're healthy, or whatever, all the positives that we can add up in our lives.
Yeah.
And we focus on those negatives.
Yes. I think what I've seen people do is when you focus on those negatives and your mind begins to think about all the ways your business is going to fail. Mm-hmm. All of the 7 potential things that could happen, that could train wreck you. And now all of a sudden you're looking for the boogeyman in every closet of like, and because your mind is focused on that. Yes. Well, then you start to make decisions expecting that to happen, right? So you might have a great opportunity come your way that if you are filled with faith and filled with expectation and we're ready to go win, you take the opportunity. But something in your head says, if you take that opportunity, you're going to fail. Mm-hmm. And so then you start making decisions like a failure. Yep. And then you ultimately manifest failure in your own life because you started thinking like a loser before you ever were one. And then you start making failure decisions. And then 5 years later, you're like, I failed. And that voice in your head's like, yeah, I told you so. Mm. Right. And I think that's when you end up in the back seat really of your own life. Right. And it's and then fear wins the day. Emotions win the day. Instead of having a disciplined, structured, take every thought captive, mentality about how you're going to go chase success. And when you expect great things to happen and you expect success, often you start making decisions like a successful person would. Mm-hmm. You see opportunity, you see strategy, you see positive outcomes, and you start looking for those situations of all the ways things can go right. And then you start acting that way. You start making decisions for that. And if you're in that mentality, you put yourself in that position. Most people who aim at success ultimately hit it. Mm-hmm. The problem is most of us on that road somewhere get out of balance internally as a leader, and we start actually pointing ourselves towards failure, and we hit that goal too.
This is what we talk about with limiting beliefs. We limit our ability to achieve based on what we think is reality for us. Yeah. This is the most we could accomplish in life. This is our ceiling. Yeah. Life has gone by. The ship has sailed. Yep. And so let's settle.
Too old, too broke, don't know enough, don't know the right people,
Yeah. Instead of getting out there and saying, here's a weakness, identify it, seek a mentor, seek help, whatever. If there's some aspect of business we don't understand, there's a lot of guys.
Totally.
So many people that I've just asked questions to that have been around for 40, 50 years and say, this is the struggle I'm having. How do you solve it?
Yeah.
And suddenly there's wealth of knowledge is at their fingertips.
And
they're happy that they can help.
Totally. Yeah. But I think the person who expects failure never looks for that person, never has the courage to ask the question, never even gets in that conversation. because their limiting beliefs stop them from behaving the right way to begin with. So anyway, I think good point, like good conversation, good thought on what goes on in your head. We talked about taking every thought captive. So let's we talked about what we believe in, what can you do about it. So what are some things that that you can do when you're in that spot? If you're listening right now, you're like, hey, yeah, I'm struggling, and I'm expecting to fail, and I'm not sleeping at night. I've got worry and panic and fear in my head more than hope and belief and strategy. What are some things people could do about it?
Make sure that you don't try to fix everything all in one go. Sometimes decisions change is difficult, and it requires incremental change. Sometimes we have to building a habit. You have to make it fun. You have to make it attainable. And so the way that's worked out in my life is many times I would say, okay, whatever the lack of discipline is, I'm going to go to the opposite extreme, do the New Year's resolution, and tomorrow we are starting a new life. Yeah. Like it's no more failure. We are going to be successful. And it's not that way, right? No. I mean, it
takes a long time to unwind.
Yeah, it does. I mean, and really celebrate minor wins, minor successes, and say, okay, this is one thing I can change today.
Yeah.
And we don't rely on anybody else for it. It's something we know we can own, something we can really control, something that we can do today, and it's something that's manageable. And not focus on all the other things.
Yeah.
Just one thing at a time, one positive decision, one healthy decision at a time, and suddenly they start to add up.
Yeah. And I think it is start small normally. And I think the thing too is you got to build confidence in your belief to change, right? And I think sometimes you start believing in always and never. So I'll never, or no, always, as opposed to like, wait a minute, I'm going to make one change today, this week. Create one habit, one discipline, a simple thing. What happens is you start to make commitments to the person in the mirror, right? Where it's like, hey, I said I was going to do this thing and I did it. And you build brick by brick by brick on that sort of thing. And it could be really small things, but you begin to build a confidence, understand like, wait a minute, I can change my life. I can lay another brick of change today, or next week. And you're not having to completely change who you are overnight because you got inspired on a late night.
And the big pitfall we want to avoid in all this, and I've fallen into it at times, is looking around us at all of the reasons why we're failing outside of what we can control.
Yeah.
And it's just, if we just had better employees, if you just didn't screw up yesterday, there's blame all around us. We can blame people, and instead of just owning problems and saying, okay, I can be a better leader. And that's what it's all about, right?
Yep.
Being healthier people, so we can be better leaders.
Yep.
It starts with us personally, how we can lead our families, and how we can lead our teams.
Yeah.
And I think it's catchy. Suddenly you have a team that's saying, wow, the boss is he's a healthy person. Like he's on it.
Mm-hmm.
That communicates excitement and vision to people. Whereas if you're the person just always blaming, always yelling, always taking shortcuts, procrastinating, you can't get buy-in.
Yeah, it rolls downhill.
Yep.
Like it or not, every organization takes on the personality of a senior leader. Good, the pros and the cons of that. That's just what happens.
So Drew, what are the outcomes? Why do this? Why? Because this takes hard work, right? This is discipline. At the end of the day, you put this hard work in. What are you going to experience personally?
Yeah.
And what does this mean for your team as a company? Your company.
Yeah. Well, I think you've got peace, right? Like, because you've made some commitments to yourself and you're keeping them. So that is the sleep at night factor, where it's like, hey, I don't have it all solved, but I know what I said I was going to do last week, I actually did. And it might not have changed the world, but it laid one brick in changing the world. And so I think there's a personal peace that comes when you're starting to make commitments to yourself and keeping them. You start to operate towards your true north, and you become a values-based leader that people can buy into. When you say one thing and do another, or you have an ideal you're aspiring to, but none of your actions line up to that. We've all been there. Like, where who you want to be and who you are, there's a pretty wide gap.
Yeah.
And when that gap exists in the leadership role, people don't trust you. And so lack of trust equals lack of commitment. Lack of commitment equals lack of results. Lack of results ultimately is going to lead to failure or lack of revenue in the business standpoint. Right. But like all that stuff ladders back down to, are you trustworthy? So I think as a leader, people buy the leader before they buy the mission every time. And so you become a believable person when you make the commitments that you're keeping. You keep the commitments that you're making.
Yeah.
And when you begin to do that, because you've focused on the right thoughts, you start to follow through and start to execute at a higher level yourself. You're more dependable. You're getting more stuff done. People want to be like you. They see something in you as a leader that they want to aspire towards. I think that's the sort of thing is that raises the tide of everyone on the team. And frankly, like even someone listening, you might just be a father. Like, I don't manage people at work, but hey, you lead yourself and you lead your family. Even those things is becoming the father or the friend. And as you begin to grow and take accountability and start to do things about the things you can do something about, you begin to have a broader sphere of influence because more things in your life are going to line up. You're going to have healthier finances. You're going to have a healthier physical body. You're going to have a healthier marriage. All these things become healthier. And then people start coming around and saying, hey, they start asking you questions. So then you actually have the ability to influence beyond just yourself because you've generated enough momentum personally to where you're starting to win some battles in your own life. It's like, I don't want to take fitness advice from a guy who's not fit physically.
So true.
I don't want money advice from a guy who's, getting payday loans, but when you've got it in order, you begin to have an influential place in other people's lives because you become a person of consistency and character yourself, so.
And it's one decision after another, building, not getting discouraged.
Yep.
Stay the course. And any of us can look at what we want to be versus where we're at today, like you brought up. And so in wrapping this up, I think that's a key take home is just, all of us to focus on the one thing we can change today.
One thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And to be flexible about it. I've had to modify my thing, my routines and be like, you know what, that doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
That's not me. Just because it worked for some other guy, he gets up at 4 a.m. Maybe you get up at 7.
Right.
But it's just the consistency of it is the commitment. And I think that's the results, staying the course over time, not being perfect, but being consistent.
Right. And ultimately you'll make progress.
Yeah.
You put yourself back in the driver's seat of your own life, your own business, your own career, your own family. You'll start charting your own course as opposed to being in the back seat and hoping it goes well.
Yeah. Hey, we're all together in this. I mean, we're not preaching at anybody here. It's just, we haven't figured it out. We're living this every day, and it's all about those choices every day. And hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully this can be something that inspires other people to just realize, hey, it's not that bad.
Yep.
The negatives aren't that negative. Focus on the good.
Yep.
Make corrections to the negative things, and just one step in front of the other.
Yeah.
And focus on really living healthy lives, and that just transcends into the rest of, really kind of cascades into the rest of the team. And suddenly you're like, wow.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Ben, thanks for taking the time. That's
Thank you,
a wrap on this episode of the Contractor Commute. We'll catch you guys next time.